Now on Mississippi Insight.
Look, I don't know who runs his Twitter account or who does that, but I definitely disagree with the idea that it takes away from the integrity.
Why is Senator Jeremy England drawing fire from Governor Tate Reeves? We'll hear from the Republican from Van Cleve about early voting, tax reforms, and more. And what's behind President Trump's shift toward Russia and his rising antagonism towards Ukraine. We'll hear from retired veteran and journalist Bill Carter this week on Mississippi Insight. I'm Byron Brown on broadcast and on podcast. Thank you for joining us for this February 23rd edition of Insight. In an era of Republican dominance in Mississippi state governance, a growing feud puts a spotlight once again on the party's divisions. Senator Jeremy England has drawn direct and pointed criticism from none other than Governor Tate Reeves. The senator's bill would allow voters to cast ballots up to 15 days before an election date without having to draw a legitimate excuse. The governor blasted him on social media, calling him, quote, the senator most likely to help the Democrats, end quote. But Senator England says that he won't be bullied by the governor. We spoke with him Wednesday at the state capitol.
Jeremy, talk about your early voting bill and what it would accomplish if passed and signed into law.
Yeah, Byron. So my early voting bill will get rid of in-person absentee voting and will replace it with 15 days of no excuse early voting. You have to do it in person. Under my bill, you would show up at your clerk's office within that 15 days prior to the election. You would show your valid photo ID. You would be marked in as having been issued a ballot, so you're voting, and you would mark your ballot up and cast it into an actual voting machine. So you're not having to worry about putting it in an envelope and signing across the flap or any of that. And again, no excuse required. So anybody can do this. I really like the idea too that this when you put this ballot in the machine, it's counted on the night of the election. So at 7 p.m., you can tabulate that machine and you get the results immediately. So we don't have to wait days for more counting to happen. And that just adds another level of integrity to our election system, having those results almost immediately.
Why are you pushing for early voting? Why do you think Mississippi needs early voting?
So Mississippians need early voting because we're such a hardworking group of people. I've had so many nurses reach out to me and say, hey, we love this idea. Doctors love the idea. Shift workers, workers who may work at the Nissan factory and live maybe south of Jackson. It's so hard for them to get back home on election day. Parents who have children that they have to take care of and get to dance and soccer and baseball and all of that kind of thing. This would allow them a more convenient way to cast their vote. And Byron, 47 other states are doing this, so it's not like we're reinventing a wheel. We would offer a very limited way of having the convenience of casting your vote, Laura.
This has been an issue that Democrats have been pushing for so long, not so much Republicans. Do you feel out of step with the Republican Party by pushing early voting?
I don't. Look, I had these senators in here voted 39-12 in favor. Yes, the Democrats voted for me, but more Republicans voted for it than against it. And we saw in this last election in 2024, we saw President Donald Trump embrace this early voting idea, and he won. He won big with doing that. And another thing that brings to mind is I learned that we had so many voters in Mississippi that were watching the national news and that coverage, and they would hear, hey, Donald Trump wants you to get out and vote early. Get out and cast your vote as soon as you can. And so they would show up at their circuit clerk's office, and then they would find out, oh my gosh, we don't have that in Mississippi. So it's starting to lead to some confusion even amongst Mississippians because we're one of only 3 states that don't do it.
Do you think there'll be more participation if we have early voting?
Certainly, and that's the idea, giving people the chance to go out and vote. If you have 15 days to vote, something like the weather is not going to keep you from voting. Something like your busy schedule wouldn't keep you from voting. I talked to somebody recently that his wife became ill with the flu, and he was taking care of the kids, so neither one of them got to vote. So that kind of thing is taken care of if you give people just this little bit of extra time. And it's a very little bit of extra time, 15 days, but it doesn't count Sundays. It's on half days on Saturday. But it just gives you that opportunity to get out and vote.
Governor Reeves posted on social media, said, quote, no excuse early voting in Mississippi is bad for election integrity, and he called you the senator most likely to help the Democrats. First, how do you respond to his assertion that this law would be bad for election integrity? What do you say to that?
Well, I think the bill actually adds to election integrity. And look, I don't know who runs his Twitter account or who does that, but I definitely disagree with the idea that it takes away from the integrity. Because again, if we're counting these ballots on the night of the election, that's That's election integrity. We're requiring people to show their valid photo ID, and then they're printed a ballot, and they can cast that ballot. That adds to the integrity and the security of our system. Another thing, if you go now under our current in-person absentee system, and you cast that in-person absentee ballot, and you put that envelope in the box, and then you end up being in town and you're able to vote on election day, you go cast an affidavit ballot. Well, that affidavit ballot's the one that counts. Then they have to go find your envelope and take it out. And there's just so much more manual and moving parts to our current system now, and this will just streamline that. I certainly think this adds the security into the integrity of our election system.
The governor is calling you a rhino, Republican in name only. What's your response to that?
Look, silly name calling doesn't ever get anybody anywhere here. Not only do I have this bill, but I've got so many other bills. I really haven't paid attention to the name calling as much, but I do wish that we could have a solid debate on this bill, because I think that if we look at the merits and we look at the terms that I've got written into this bill, we'll find that, look, we can do this in Mississippi. We have excellent circuit clerks, excellent elections commissioners. We've got a great Secretary of State right now that can help implement this system, and I think it's time for Mississippi to get into this new way of adding some convenience to our voting system.
Why do you think the governor is attacking you personally?
I don't know. Again, I don't even know if that's him. I hope it's not. I think the governor does a great job at what he does. I do think that the name calling and the back and forth, it's not helpful for anybody. It's not helpful for Mississippi. But look, I think we'll get beyond that, and we'll see how the House takes up this bill.
You disagree on his tax policy. He is pushing for full elimination of the income tax, as the House plan calls for. You have urged caution, and the Senate proposal outlined by the Lieutenant Governor last week cuts but does not eliminate income tax. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, I think it's fiscally responsible for us to take smaller steps when it comes to tax policy. I don't think. Look, I certainly wouldn't say we don't need to cut the income tax all the way. If we can get to that point, that's wonderful. I think that's everybody's goal in the Senate. But you'll see what we do is we just take these smaller steps to get there. 3 years ago, we cut it down to a 4% flat tax. This year, our plan will take that down to a 2.99% flat tax. So we're making those steps. That doesn't mean we're going to stop at 2.99 and never visit this again. Every year I've been here since 2020, we've talked had really great conversations about cutting taxes wherever we can. We need to keep having those conversations. But I think under our plan, a plan that cuts 2% off the grocery tax, it does increase the gas tax, but it also cuts the income tax down to 2.99. That gives us a very diverse revenue system here in Mississippi that would probably do better than other states if it came to a recession or some other hard economic times. If we have a very diverse tax structure, a very low tax structure, but a very diverse tax structure, it sets us up for better financial stability when things do take a downward turn.
Governor Reeves says that the Senate proposal is a non-starter, and anything short of full income tax elimination will not be good enough for him. Where does that leave the Senate ahead of a potential negotiations with the House? Where do you guys stand right now?
Well, look, nothing's ever off the table up here, and look, we're the legislature, so we handle that. We're going to negotiate. I think the House did very good with HB 1 to give us a good starting position from their end, and I think that our bill is a very good starting position. I hope nobody's naive to think that one of our plans is going to be the final product, because there are going to be negotiations that go into that. I don't know if anything is a non-starter on this, because look, we're cutting taxes. That's what we do. We're conservative Republicans primarily in this body, in both chambers, and I believe if we got a tax cut to Governor Reeves' desk, he's going to sign it. He loves cutting taxes, and I'm with him on that. We're both conservative Republicans when it comes to fiscal policy, for sure.
You've written in several bills reform state campaign finance law. One of them is a measure to limit corporate political campaign contributions to $1,000 per calendar year. The Senate passed it. Why is this so important?
Well, that one in particular is important is because the way that law was written originally, it only applied to Mississippi corporations and to corporations doing business in Mississippi. So it wasn't fair to those corporations, and it didn't apply to foreign corporations, corporations incorporated in other states and in other countries. So this bill brought that together to make it more fair. So now that $1,000 limit applies to all corporations.
Real quick, back to the tax bill. When will the tax bill, the Senate tax version of that bill, be presented? Any date and time on that?
So I believe that. So I know that it's. I believe it's being dropped today. We'll probably see it in Finance Committee. I know we're meeting tomorrow after recess, I believe. So we'll take it up in the Finance Committee. Senator Harkins has done a very good job. Worked very late nights weeks up here to get that ready for us. So once we pass it, maybe as early as next week, we might see it on the floor.
What else are you pursuing in this session when it comes to campaign finance reform?
So with regard to campaign finance reform, another bill we passed was to have the Secretary of State's office set up an online database where statewide officials, our county or municipal officials can go on that website and file their campaign finance report. You can still file by email or by hand delivery if you want to, but the bill also requires the Secretary of State to put those online. And again, that goes all the way down to the municipal level. So the municipal clerks, if they take on these campaign finance reports, they send it to the Secretary of State's office and it gets published. The idea behind that is to have more transparency and have the ability for people to see who's donating to campaigns and also how candidates are spending their money, which is important for people to understand the priorities and where our interests may lie.
You are among several lawmakers who pushed to allow direct shipment of wine to consumers. Now a bill that to that effect has passed both the House and the Senate. Talk about why you pursued this.
Yeah, look, that's another important bill that I think is a step forward for Mississippi. 47 other states have direct shipment of wine, and it's a privilege that I think Mississippians ought to be able to have, to be able to go to wine country in California or Oregon or near Biltmore in the Asheville area of North Carolina, and all of these areas that have their specialty wines that you can't get here in Mississippi, or wines that are on a limited allocation here in Mississippi that we run out of on occasion. Mississippians should have the ability to reach out and have those wines shipped to their house. Again, we're not reinventing the wheel with that either. 47 other states do it. We require the boxes to be marked for alcohol, labeled as alcohol, only to be accepted by someone 21 years of age or older. And our common carriers are already doing that for these other states. They're checking IDs. They're making sure that happens. So a lot of negotiation went on that into that bill with package stores and with folks who represent the wineries and the interests of people who want to have this, the citizens of Mississippi that want to have this ability to do that. But this is a bill Senator Michelle has worked on for a very long time. As a matter of fact, it was his bill that I took up and argued on the floor in favor of this deal. And you've got Representative Brent Powell and Shonda Yates in the House. A lot of folks have worked on this, and yes, it's headed to the governor's desk, so I look forward to seeing that become law.
Straight ahead, Senator Roger Wicker says the U.S. must take care of Ukraine. It's that view out of sync with the president. Mississippi Insight returns in a moment. If you are one of millions of observers last week trying to make sense of the peace process for Ukraine, you're not alone. President Trump has shocked many of America's enemies and allies alike by initiating bilateral talks with Russian leaders without the Ukrainians themselves. What's behind this apparent shift in relations towards Vladimir Putin's Russia and pro-Western Ukraine? Bill Carter has some unique perspectives. He's a retired colonel in the U.S. Air Force Reserves as well as a former journalist. Bill, welcome to Mississippi Insight.
Well, thank you for having me, Byron.
Well, the U.S. has spent the last 3 years supporting Ukraine in a war that began with Russia's invasion of that country. Why the shift now, and are Americans' interests best served by it?
I don't know if I would speculate as to our interests best served. I think that Mr. Trump, in his reorganization of everything and trying to make people more accountable to the United States, has said that we need better accountability of what's going on in Ukraine. And especially with any type of funding that we've been giving them. For example, over $200 billion of American money has gone to Ukraine. And even Mr. Zelensky admits 100 billion, that's with a B, has just kind of gone up in smoke and nobody can explain where it went. So I think it's more of an accounting thing. That's number one. Number two, and probably even more so, is why we're doing what we're doing. Why are we involved in something going on in Ukraine when we have enough problems here? And then finally, the businessman in Donald Trump is saying, well, how does this benefit us? And in this particular case, there is a wide range of minerals and very rare metals and so on that that the United States would like to get a piece of, and has actually gone to Zelensky and said, hey, listen, why don't you pay us back a little bit of what we've been giving to you, give us some access to your mineral reserve. At first, that sounded like a good idea to Mr. Zelensky, and then all of a sudden he said, no, Ukraine's not for sale, which made Mr. Trump angry. So why are we there? We're there because Ukraine, well, why are we still fighting this war? It's a really good question, because in reality, I think that, and I had a conversation with a member of Mr. Trump's staff today who said that we're not really sure why we're there, because Putin does want to negotiate his way out of it. It has gone on a lot longer than he thought was possible. It's caused enough turmoil in his country. He just kind of wants to save some face and walk away. But at the same time, Zelensky is, he's not a professional politician. He's an actor. He's a comedian and an actor. And I don't think he understands the intricacies of give and take and not trying to irritate the people that are trying to help you the most.
Well, President Trump has begun to cast Ukraine's President Zelensky as a bad actor and Russian President Putin as a trustworthy party in negotiations. Is that a bit much of a swallow, given that Putin invaded Ukraine in the first place?
Well, you know, it's interesting. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine at the National Security Agency a couple of hours ago about it. And he was telling me that Putin is trying to reestablish where the Soviet Union was and no longer is, and is trying to gather those resources back into what he perceives as his country. At the same time, the runaway Baltic states, the people who have totally divorced themselves of the former Soviet Union and don't want to have any real relationship with Russia as its leader, it's really a hard way to try to figure out the balance that's going to make everybody happy. Putin has come to the negotiating table. Other nations, we have the British and the French, who are on their way to the United States to have meetings with President Trump about a way that we can get past all of this and negotiate out of this war, because it's causing all kinds of problems in Europe, and it's causing concerns with other countries that are afraid that that Russia might try to usurp their land, their rights, their new way of living. So it's really hard for Zelensky, who really doesn't have any understanding on international politics, whose only real abilities are communication, to understand that he's having to play to a much larger crowd now, and not just the people of Ukraine.
Senate Armed Services Chairman Roger Wicker from Mississippi said very clearly in the last few days that Ukraine should be directly involved in negotiations. He told reporters, quote, anything meaningful in the sort of peace talks that might get a fair result would definitely need to have the Ukrainians at the table. He also called President Putin a war criminal and voiced his continued support for the NATO alliance. Is Senator Wicker wrong?
No, he is speaking the truth. In order for there to be a lasting peace in Ukraine, it has to be between the people of Ukraine and Russia. That is not a contest. The problem is in the negotiation on how that will occur, so that it appears to be more of a win-win. And I hate to give Putin a win for anything. I'm an old soldier, and it grates me to give him anything. But if it means that the people of Ukraine are safe, if it means that the European and world economy becomes more stabilized by working out the details between the partners, so to speak, and then just bringing Zelensky the whole thing to look at and to understand, and so he can digest it. That's what I think they're talking about when they're leaving him out of the negotiation.
Bill Carter, it's always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for joining us.
Byron, thanks for having me.
All right, and we'll be right back.
If you miss part of an interview, you can always catch Mississippi Insight online and on demand. Search for 12 News on Demand on YouTube and your favorite podcast apps. Full episodes are available Saturday evenings. And Mississippi Insight broadcasts twice on Sunday mornings, 6:30 a.m. on 12 News and 11:30 a.m. on the CW.
If you have comments or questions about today's show or suggestion for an interview or segment, just drop us a line. Email our producers. The address is news@WJTV.com. Big thanks to Senator Jeremy England and Bill Carter for joining us this week. We'll be back next weekend with more of the political and current affairs coverage that you demand. I'm Byron Brown from all of us here at 12 News. Make it a great weekend.